Good morning, everyone. See, for today's class, CG class, we will deal with India's-China relationship, the all-pervading India-China relationship. So, India-China relationship, I want to take at least 2 class on this. So let's spend a little bit more time on this comparatively with others, because perhaps in our international relations today, in the environment where we are, China perhaps is one of the biggest factor in our international relations and our foreign policies engagement. China is often at the center of it, and it is always in the news. And also the issues that we have with India, with China, and also the multifaceted engagement that we have with them. Like, I think it will need at least two class, including today's. So let's go into India's-China relationship. So the map is in front of you, map of India and China. We have to say that we share a boundary with them now, after Chinese annexation of Tibet and Xinjiang province. But before we go into the relationship between these two countries, we need to understand a little bit about the thinking of these two countries. So you think about it. Since the early, let's start with our constitution. Let's not go back till the ancient times, right? Now, when we talk about India and China relationship, we know that we have an ancient relationship, right? We have cultural relationship, trade relationship with them. So there has been this engagement with India and China since long time ago. Like that. So now, after independence, India in 47, China in 48, 49, so let us look at the thinking of these two countries. So when we talk about China, last time I told you about the 5-finger policy, right, of Mao Zedong, as Tibet as the palm, and Ladakh, Nepal, Bhutan, Sikkim, Arunachal Pradesh as the 5 fingers. And they says that, or these theories believe that these areas are to be liberated. These areas, China has legitimacy in the areas that I just listed, according to these 5-finger policies. So this has been with in the Chinese thinking as early as the time of Mao Zedong. You compare that with Indian side. India Gidi, Article 51, I believe, in Directive Principles of Trade Policy, we were talking about peaceful coexistence. We were talking about peace in international relationship and all of that. So we see a kind of divergence in the thinking of these two countries. So since the early times, we see a kind of this aggressive posture or aggressive thinking in the side of China, while that of India, as I said, I think perhaps we are, I think I'm not, I might be wrong here, but I think we are few or maybe the only country where the constitution mandates that peaceful international relationship and all of that in the constitution itself. So we are that kind of country. So this is just highlighting the difference in thinking of these two major countries. So India got China relationship. What are the issues and how have we been engaging with them? It changes with time. Of course, the issues remain. Adubu akoi karmaina mo engage tawani every changes with time, and we will come to that in later part of our lecture. So you look at the map of China. It's a big country, right? It's a very big, huge country. And now, if we look at the history of China, we know that China is an ancient civilization. And we also know that we have been under the influence of, we have part of the country has been a colony, and we have been, both the countries, India and China, have been under the influence of the colonial power and other powers. So we have this kind of commonality in our history. I do like that. Aduga, was it coming to India, China, the main issues between India and China that we are having now already. What is this? Can you see the screen?
No, sir.
Map, you don't see the map?
No, sir.
Okay. I didn't know if you were on the map. Was it Urwa? I should be seeing by now.
Uru, sir.
So, the issues the main some issues now between India and China is we have the issue of Tibet. Then we have border issues. What more? Border issues. Think about it. What more do we have? We have water issues. We have trade issues, right? Then you have India in China's relation or China's influence in South Asia, or we can just say China South Asia policy. You have China Pakistan relationship, and then also China doesn't like India US relationship very much. But for today, let's focus on these two. So I see what we have to understand when we talk about India and China is the border that we have with India and China now is the result of colonial policies. Colonial masters in draw Toramba. And later. So not only that, before even going to that, let us first look at what China wants and what India wants. So China is a growing global power now. China is challenging US hegemony. So China wants to be the hegemon in China, in Asia. And in this, who is on your way? The biggest power who can challenge China's hegemony in Asia is India. And as you must see, let us go one more back to one concept, what we call Middle Kingdom complex. To understand China, China's policies, and also for better engagement with China, we have to know China, right? So you have what we call this Middle Kingdom complex with China. The Chinese see China as the center, and the others the peripheries. So they are the center of Asia, or they are the center, and that they are the dominant power, and the other powers, the peripheral powers, the outside peripheral powers are subordinate to them, or they even consider these peripheries people who are not of who are not Chinese as barbarians ko adugumba moigi thinking khara lai. And masigi Middle Kingdom complex why do I bring it is because you know hairaga, like I said before, China wants to be a hegemon in Asia and is now challenging US hegemony in the global world order. See like that. So this is not much, very much. Yam kenabli natina ko Middle Kingdom kind of thinking because there also they see as the center, they see as the main player, main power. Like that. So China's desire is, like I said, to be hegemon in Asia, and they want to be a global power, and they are challenging US hegemony. See like that. And then towards China's south, we have, that is where we are, but we are there towards south, southwest, or west and southwest. We have, like we are there. And then South Asia, the show. India, China does not want India to be the hegemon even in South Asia. That is why you will see China's continuously like engaging with Pakistan, Nepal, Myanmar, and other Sri Lanka and other countries to contain India. See like that. That is now the basics of what China wants. And on other side of India did carry Pambano. Also, there are questions asked as to why China and India not go together. I think even it was Deng Xiaoping, I think, who even talked of Asian centuries, that these centuries will be the Asian centuries. So it is still not clear what this Asian century stood for. Asian centuries, Asia, India, Pakistan included, or it's just Chinese centuries, we don't know. But by the look of it and by their foreign policies and by their engagement with other countries, perhaps the Asian centuries that they are talking about is the Chinese centuries. India got China got palm. What does India wants from China? Or what kind of relationship that India wants with China? I agree. India is also a rising power. And India, for all its weakness, wants a resolution of border with China. Like a peaceful relationship with China. But of course, in international relationship, or forget about international relationship, for that matter, in the real world is different from what we want to be, right? So in international relation, what we always have to see is, I am more of a realist. So I want to see as it is rather than what it ought to be called. So, and this has been, I think, if we look at the recent trends of India's foreign policies and India's engagement with other nations, the realism seems to be the dominant ideologies in India today. So India India want a respectable relationship with China. India does not want to play second fiddle to China. So India wants to have kind of parity. Parity India China. So India also wants to have a sphere of influence of its own. So there will be like contestation. A scholar India and China relationship the problems that we have is because of the fundamental nature of these two countries. The border dispute this says it's a reflection, just a reflection, not the real issues. Both of them are powers which aspire to be major power, and then they are rising also. And like that. So as it stands today, China, capability-wise, in terms of economy, in terms of military strength, China is ahead of us. That is the political reality. So when we engage with China, we cannot just go by emotion. One Indian army is enough for like 10 Chinese soldiers, 20. We cannot go by that. We have to go by the political reality, the existential reality as it is, not by some idealism or hyper-nationalism. So as it stands today, China is ahead of us economically and also military-wise. So, but still then, how is India engaging with China? Containment and engagement, both. What is the meaning of this? The meaning of this is India is trying to contain China and also at the same time engaging with China. So even if we look at the height of Doklam standoff, the height of India and China tensions in the recent past, we will see that even though if we were like neck to neck in our border areas, the trade between the two countries was like not much affected by this standoff in our borders. So we are engaging with them wherever possible. And also we are trying to contain them. And how do India try to contain China? So how, when I say contain, you can understand like more away in the sense of India trying to, no, let me not go to that. Just understand the word containment. That would be the biggest, the most accurate expression. So how did India try to contain China? India is trying to contain Chinese hegemony in India's neighborhood and also in India's external neighborhood. And how do India do that? First is by what we call external balancing. External balancing and also internal. External balancing Now, China has problem in South China Sea. India has problem with the peripheral countries of South China Sea. China has problem with Vietnam. China has problem with Philippines, Indonesia, and all of that. So what did India do? India engages with them. India sells military weapons to them. India engaged with South Korea. India engaged with Japan. Engaging with these countries where China has disputes, or say India's establishing its presence in China's neighborhood. Other aspect of this external balancing is India's engagement with major powers, which are often on the opposite side of the spectrum in international relations, like India-US relationship. Now, in the Indo-Pacific, India needs the help of this major superpowers. So India is balancing China's capabilities, China's power, by engaging with countries like United States of America, Japan, Australia. That is what we understood by external balancing. On the internal side, what India is doing? India is developing its own capabilities. India is building infrastructure along the borders. India is acquiring military arsenals, high-tech military arsenals. And then India is developing its own missile systems. India is reforming its military. These are aspects of internal balancing. So our engagement with China, we can say, is a two-pronged: containment and at the same time engagement. That is how we are dealing with China as of now. And we will go into the detail when we talk about each and every specific issues like BRI, CPEC, and all of that, or India's engagement with Asian countries, or what the so these are, you can say, part of India's balancing of containment policy and balancing with regards to China. So that is the basics of how India is engaging with China right now. Now, how's it? So let's come back to the main issues with India and China. That is the issue of debate. So coming back to the question of why India and China cannot work together, right? So I wish we can work together and we can grow together and perhaps have that Asian century score. Asian countries has been like a kind of gold mine for other European countries, other colonial powers. We have been exploited since a long time ago. So it would have been great if these Asian countries rise together, and emerge as and have a good relationship with one another, and rise together and have that kind of influence in global world order. But like I said, the real world is different from what we want to be and what we have in our mind. But we are engaging with the real world, so we have to be realists. So in this, we have this a kind of contestation with India and China with regards to what it wants to achieve, and also we have so many border disputes and all of that. So as it stands today, like we are not that going together as much as we want to be. The dispute still remains, hostility still remains, and we are kind of suspicious of one another's move. If India does something, then China is suspicious. If China does something, India is suspicious, and we are in that kind of environment. And we are also a natural enemy. Natural enemy because we are neighbor. If we look at Kautilya's Mandala theory and all of that, the immediate neighbors is the natural enemy. So these are what it is. We cannot change. So now, coming to India and China's issues, we have issues on Tibet. It is said that the border issues with India and all is the symptoms of the issue in Tibet. So let's see why they say that. So this is why the Inner Mongolia and Inner Mongolia. So why do China need Tibet? And even before coming to the question of why do China need Tibet, let us first understand the relationship between Tibet, China, and India. So the relationship with, first let's go to China and Tibet relationship. So China and Tibet relationship, it's kind of of course, Tibet was under the suzerainty of China for most part of its history. But the control of the mainland China on Tibet depends on the strength of the emperor who is ruling China. So, like more or like Tibet is an autonomous region, and then when it comes to India's engagement with Tibet, so I'm not going back to the Buddhism and all of that, okay? I'll go to the colonial times. In colonial times, so when you read history, you will also come across this. Agreement have convention have sure agreement have convention have I might be wrong here. You cross check this one. Asini concept by. Karino Hive Mutamda. British ki Damaktadi, India during that time was a jewel in their crown. It was perhaps their most valuable possession. So they want to protect India from any other power, major power. And during this time, even if we look at India's policy in Afghanistan, Afghan war and all of that, is premised upon protection of India from other powers. So when we look at Tibet, it is also the same. So the Russian Empire was expanding during this period of time. So, and British government has the kind of fear that, it might, Russia's influence in India's north, around this area, might threaten British India's position. So they want to have control over this area. So what do they do? If you want to have a control over the region, and if you don't want to directly administer, then what is the next? You need a buffer state, right? To protect your own kingdom. So it is in this context that the Simla Convention or Agreement the Mahari I Coke 1914 and the agreement makak sign Russia was there, China was there, Tibet was there, but China walked out. So Masigi agreement again, what we have the McMahon line hype ko asida sign tawkibadagi lakiba line ko McMahon line hype se. So masida kari tawra it recognized China's sovereignty over Tibet, but karino haragadi asida anni thona kind of inner Tibet and outer Tibet so that this part will have more autonomy with regards to China. But the point here, what I'm trying to stress is, the relationship with Tibet and China and India. So, China relationship with Tibet is, for most part of its history, dependent on the strength of the Chinese emperor, or whoever is ruling is mainland China. And also, China, Tibet, for most of its part, is remain like more or like that autonomous state called the mainland. So, and why do I bring in the Simla agreement? Because important thing is McMahon line. But China did not recognize this McMahon line. As McMahon line say recognized that is why they are claiming Arunachal Pradesh. Arunachal Pradesh is part of southern Tibet. So that is the reason why I bring in the Simla agreement of 1914. And also India, the point of view the India wants Tibet. Why? The same reason why British want Tibet, India also want Tibet to be an autonomous state. To act as a buffer. So imagine if Tibet exists as a country, India's northern and northeastern problems. Yes.
Simla agreement duna Pakistan ke India go iba.
No, Simla
convention no iba.
Convention sorry, then I was confused with the So thank you. Simla Convention 1914. So why? Because if we have Tibet as an independent country, so think the problems that we have will not exist to most part, and the relationship with China would have been very different. So India wants what? Autonomous Tibet. Adubo. In 1954, when we signed that Panchil Agreement, we recognized Tibet as part of China. The question is why? I'll come to that. But let's first look at why China wants Tibet. I am Tamda. Asigi reasons Xinjiang province ko see the Inner Mongolia and Mongolia, China and Laotian given after the independence. So these two regions, Tibetans are not ethnically Chinese, and neither are the Xinjiang's. Uyghur Muslim guy and Harib the kind of Asigi area and Masigi province. So Karigidamaka no China not Tibet Muslim Uyghur Laotian Kiba. It is also because of their own strategic interest, right? Because without Tibet, they would be exposed in the south. And then if we look at the occupation, like the history of China, we also see that occupation towards China has also come from the West. They want to have this kind of, they want to have these two kingdoms under their control. And also for India, China's Central Asia policy. So coming back specifically to why China need Tibet and Motambla. First, the security interest like security interest. Second is water. Because Tibetan Plateau is the source of major rivers of both China and India. Most of the major rivers come. And the third is timber resources and oil and gas. So if you're following the news on Tibet, so 2007 there were talk of this exploration and all of that in Tibet, and I think in the year 2021, I think like exploration has started. I have the more kind of confirmed of this oil and gas reserves in Tibet. So these are some of the reasons why China wants Tibet. So after independence, China and India. Now let's see how India and China engage with one another with reference to Tibet. So, India's independence and China's independence. And I also highlighted in the beginning about the thinking of these two different countries, right? India decided they were full of idealism. Nehru's time. Even like international policy, the India kari taugani kari stripe taugani hai constitution they are. But you contrast that with that of the thinking of Mao Zedong, that five-finger policies and all of that. So India na karigidamuk Tibet pambano and China na karigidamuk Tibet pambano. I don't know list of weeks ago. I've highlighted that issue. And independent Pangbaga around 1950s, the China and Tibet Laotian Reba. So what is India's stand on that? And the India, so Masigi Matamda, there were perhaps two schools of thought in India with regards to China. One led by Sardar Patel and one Nehru. So Sardar Patel groups in a high machine. I'm just giving you one name, okay? Just not one person. So Moigi groups in a high machine, they are aware of Chinese aggressive policies and aggressive thinking. So they want to contain China. And I think he was Controller and Auditor General during that time. He even suggested increasing India's defense budget. So they want to contain China. And what is the issue of Nehru? Nehru is also aware of these Chinese intentions, Chinese aggressions and all of that. But he rather he chose the policy of appeasement with China. If you remember, India was the first non-socialist state to recognize Communist China. India supported China in the Korean War. The US brought a resolution with reference to Korean War in the UN, listing China as one of the aggressors, but India rejected. India voted against it. So Nehru kind of followed a policy of appeasement with regards to China. And if we ask the question why Nehru do that, then there are few answers can be given, because like many answers, in fact, or multiple answers depending on multiple personalities. We will have different answers on that. So perhaps one is the belief of Nehru's in his idealism, and the second one is perhaps the necessities of India during that time, perhaps not to engage with country like China and rather focus on domestic needs. So, but these are open to interpretations and open to answers, multiple answers as to why Nehru chose this policy. But perhaps 1954 Panchshil Agreement was the peak of Nehru's appeasement policy. So in that agreement, like we can say it is a kind of unilateral concession on the part of India. Why? Because India did not get anything substantial out of China, but India recognized Chinese sovereignty in Tibet. Of course, that Chinese sovereignty was recognized since the British times, that was there. But in independent India, we recognize Chinese sovereignty in Tibet. And going back to Simla Convention, we also know that China did not accept the McMahon Line. So we have issues here. So suppose if Tibet existed as a country, then perhaps the issue of Arunachal Pradesh and Chinese claim might not exist. And like I said, China did not accept the McMahon Line. So kind of we have a disputed border. And on this eastern side also, Aksai Chin area and some part of Himachal Uttarakhand. We also have disputes here. Aksai Chin dedi karino hairga Johnson line hai namaleko. Johnson line. Amana India ka China ka border da we have these two lines. Mohan line. Asida karino hairga Johnson line ki matung innadi Aksai Chin se is part of China. But Masigi agreement kind of accept out there. So when there was this meetings called to settle the Western dispute, the Chinese delegates did not come. Johnson line ki matung inadi Aksai Chin belongs to China, but McMahon line ki matung inadi it becomes part of. Wait, okay, I'm confusing here. It becomes part of. Wait, I am confusion later. Sorry. Okay, I'll come back to the later. Refresh topic. So the point being that there is dispute. This all starts because of Tibet. India not Tibet recognized it becomes part of Tibet, becomes part of China now. So, and even like China's position in Tibet is also not dependent on India recognition of Tibet as part of China or not, because China always regarded Tibet as part of China. And also the Tibet, say China occupied in the 1950s, like But since China did not recognize this McMahon line and the Johnson line, we have these border issues. So now coming back to the issue of Tibet. So 1954, the Indian recognized the Uyghur, but 1959, what happened in 1959? So, and there was also hue and cry, opposition in domestic politics against Nehru for this, for his position on Tibet in the Panchayat Agreement in 1954. So, and then there is also this unrest in Tibet against Chinese occupation. The one in 1959, the Dalai Lama. Dalai Lama escaped from Tibet, and India gave asylum to Dalai Lama in India. So this further complicates India and China relationship. So China now feels that India is meddling in the internal affairs of China, and China, like even accuse India of being an imperialist power for line to accept because these areas are under India occupation, right? So they consider this as an imperial move. China accused India of being an imperialist, and also because of India's giving asylum to Dalai Lama in India, and even before that, in this Chinese Tibetan unrest, Chinese accused India and CIA of working together to foil this unrest in Tibet. And then the giving of asylum to Dalai Lama further complicated the matters, and China accused India of meddling in internal affairs of Tibet. So, was it right on the part of India to give asylum to Dalai Lama? So that's for you to think about. But what it does is, and in international relation, like I always say, there is nothing much as to what is right and wrong. But what matters is the national interest. I'm saying again and again, the national interest matters. So India gave asylum to Dalai Lama, and then we have government in exile in Dharamsala. In India, the place where Dalai Lama lives now in India, Dharamsala. So, what gain India has because of this move on the part of India is perhaps kind of Dalai Lama become a trump card for India with reference to China and Tibet, because Dalai Lama is a spiritual and also the head of Tibet. And he's on, and Dalai Lama, the present position as it stands now, is not asking for sovereignty and all of that, but he's more of asking for autonomy for Tibet. He's a trump card for India with regards to Tibet vis-a-vis China. But it says that he is a trump card expiring very soon, because India doesn't have much time. There is one group of scholars view, because the Dalai Lama is getting old, and in the event of Dalai Lama's death, what China is doing is finding the successor of Dalai Lama. So if the successor of the present Dalai Lama is pro-China, then India's trump card in Tibet, that is Tibet, we don't know yet what will come, but there is some truth in the saying that India's trump card in Tibet is expiring very soon. So if the successor of the present Dalai Lama is pro-China, then there won't be much of China's India's credibility or India's stake with regards to Tibet. I'm not saying that it will not be there, but in all probability, the legitimacy is going to drop into later. So that is what happened in 1959. So I've told you what China wants, or what is the interest of China in Tibet. I also told you what is the interest of India in Tibet. The first is the security reasons, and India also has water interest in Tibet, because now many rivers in India, major rivers, has their origin in Tibet. So with that in mind, what is the present situation of China and India with reference to Tibet? So now I told you that we have Tibetan government in exile in Dharamsala. I don't know whether it would be right for me to say Tibetan government in exile, but let's say India gives asylum to Dalai Lama and the Tibetan people, and from time to time you will see the Tibetan people protesting in front of Chinese embassy and all of that. So, and China does not want that. So India kind of still has a say in Tibet because of the presence of Dalai Lama and Tibetan refugees in India. And the interests of India in Tibet remains the same. India still needs Tibet for its security reasons. But only time will tell what will happen after Dalai Lama. But India's interest, for all its practical purpose, I think is likely to remain intact with regards to Tibet, because border and geography is not going to change, and source of river is not going to change. So that is with regards to Tibet. India is still supporting Tibet, and China still doesn't want India supporting Tibet. So now that is the question of Tibet. Now, let us discuss the issue of Aksai Chin. Johnson Line and McMahon Line. Johnson Line because of the Simla Convention, and McMahon Line, Johnson Line, other agreement. Both this, China did not recognize it. So keep these two now, okay? Just remember that China does not recognize it. And then from 1959, let us go to 1962, where India and China fought the major war. So now remember, China claims on Arunachal Pradesh, there is the erstwhile Nepal still remains, and Aksai Chin and some parts around here still remains. So we can see that this all is also because of the question of Tibet, right? Because this Arunachal Pradesh, Nepal, China is regarded as part of southern Tibet. So in spite of India recognizing Tibet as part of China in 1956, and also India's support for China in United Nations Security Council, or voting against US resolution to term China as aggressor in Korean War, and India recognition of China, first non-socialist state to recognize China, communist China. So in spite of all of this, and also the bonhomie between the premier of the head of India and China during Nehru times, and the dialogues, like Hindi Chini bye bye and all of that, we still fight a war in 1962, and India still accept Dalai Lama in 1959. So the question is, why do we fight in 1962? The reason. So in this, I think it was the defense minister or a very high Chinese official said in one of his visits to Sri Lanka with the Sri Lankan counterparts. I'm not remember the exact personality, okay, but that is not very important to us also. So what is important is the idea. It says that it was done to teach India a lesson, in one of the conversation. It is that Chinese officials is said to have said this to the Chinese to the Sri Lankan ministers, that the 1962 war was to teach India a lesson. Because if we look at India policy in 1962, what do we see? We see that India was, emerging as a leader of the third world, right? And then we have this 1959, India's giving a place shelter to Dalai Lama. So China, that person is believed to have said that we did this to teach China a lesson, but keeping that aside. So now, why? What transpired before the war, 1962? So there was this border dispute, or a kind of contested border between India and China, because of the non-acceptance of Johnson Line and the McMahon Line that we know. So, and also Aksai Chin, China need Aksai Chin. Why? Because it has the only all-weather road connecting between these two provinces, Tibet and Xinjiang, this area. So they need this Aksai Chin. But what makes matter complicated in Aksai Chin or the western sector around here is because this area is inhabited, uninhabited. Me like these are uninhabited areas, and also not demarcated and not and the line, there is no accepted lines between these two countries. So it is a complicated matter here. So in the late 1950s, when China started building construction of road and things like that around this area, but the area is not demarcated. So, but China need Aksai Chin because of its need to connect these two regions of China. And there was blunder on the side of India. There was a failure on multiple counts with regards to India in 1962 war. But to the Carino miscalculations, so miscalculations in Carino you will come across what you call the forward policy of Nehru. Forward policy of Nehru's Carino. So when these Chinese activities started, or activities Nehru adopted what we call the forward policy. Forward policy is a Carino is pushing India line as far as possible from the forward basis have that because I suppose I'm not saying that these are accepted lines, okay? Suppose this is like the kind of line which understanding between China and India, that okay, chalo, from this side you have control, from this side I have control, even though there is no formal agreement. The troops were stationed right in these two areas. So suppose if India is here prior to this forward policy, and what Nehru does is Nehru wants this to go more further towards China. This is basically the idea of forward policy. So when this happened, and keep this in mind, before this you have the 1959 Dalai Lama saga, and then the border is not demarcated, not accepted by both the parties, or not demarcated, I should say, not accepted by China. Nehru adopted the forward policies. And when he adopted these forward policies, there was no preparation either. So troops in these forward bases are very little, sometimes even 10, small bunkers. And there is no proper line of connecting these bases, no proper logistic. Even the military equipments were not, fit to fight. We're not equipped militarily. We are not equipped to fight in that kind of environment during that point of time. And also there is this miscalculation on the side of India that China will not retaliate when we adopted these policies. But China launched a coordinated attack in 1962 in all of its sector. Here. So they occupy much of the areas that they are occupying now outside China, and also almost all of Arunachal Pradesh occupied by China. And that was perhaps the biggest humiliations that India faced since its independence. But China unilaterally, okay, not some ceasefire or anything like that, not because of India's call or pushback. China unilaterally declared ceasefire and pulled back from Arunachal Pradesh. But the question remains, why Arunachal Pradesh is being always claimed by China? And even when we give statehood to Arunachal Pradesh, there was again a standoff. The relation between the two countries get heated up. So if China has this claim on Arunachal Pradesh, and if they're like ready to bring up these issues again and again, so and if Arunachal Pradesh is of utmost importance to them, they could have already taken in 1962. They could have at least maintained the position in 1962, but why do they pull back? So the probable reason why they pull back is during that time, it was difficult for China to maintain its position in Arunachal Pradesh. One. Number two is they feel that it is not that very important for them to control Arunachal Pradesh right now. And also they wanted to keep this issue alive to contain India. Once this issue is gone, then on what more issue can they engage with? Can they keep India engage with them, not in a good way, okay, in a negative sense when I talk about engagement here, or its policies of containment with regards to India. And they pull back. But even if after they pull back, now, even when home ministers or any high-profile visit to Arunachal Pradesh or Tawang, they always raise an issue out of these visits to this area. So that is the part of India and Tibet, 1962 war, and the Aksai Chin. So Aksai Chin seko, if my memory serves me right, Megmohon line gi matung inadi, China, this part become part of India, and this part goes to China. Or Johnson line gi matung inadi, India, this part goes to India. And Johnson line say, asida extend out, it does not extend here. Right. But you check, okay, you can just cross check it. I might be wrong here. And I do homework key. So we will do one more classes, and if needed, 3 more classes on this. No, you see, even the Indo-China relation, this is a wrong terminology. Sino-India, or just say India-China relationship. Indo-China, they used to. India-China relationship. I see you read up on any of the website, and What is that? What will keep for tomorrow? I see read up Toro. Aduga Ozki and Hariba Johnson line, the memo line. You read up on that. So that's all for today. And Aduga Ngasigi, what I want to the takeaway that I want you to get from today's class is how India is engaging with China hierarchy. Contentment and engagement. This has to be in your answer, these two words, technical word, contentment and engagement. So how are we trying to contain them? I've told you, I've explained a bit, and how are we engaging them? I've explained a bit, but we will get more to the specifics of this containment and engagement as we progress in the next classes. So have a good day. I'll be here for 3 more minutes if you have any questions. Otherwise, you can leave. The class is over. And these days, I'm consciously trying to not extend my class beyond 1 hour. The weather is very nice. It's very cold. We don't want to wake up from our bed. And the attention span seems to be very limited when it comes to online classes. So I'm consciously trying to keep it strictly to 1 hour. So if you want to increase it, you can let me know. Everyone here? Okay then. Have a good day. I'm ending the class. Bye.